Good morning, everybody. We're live from the birdhouse. It is Tuesday, October 18th, and today I'm going over some of my favorite feeders for the fall. Plus, I'll show you some of the other items that I like to put out as it starts getting cooler to help encourage birds to come to the yard and in order to help them kind of survive the winter months as we get into these cooler months. And it's basically the same things that they need all year round: food, water, shelter. It's all important, especially as we get into months where things are quite cold and we've got storms coming. So I can show you some of these things as well. As always, we love to know who's on. You can say hi in the comments. If you have questions, throw them in there. And we love to know your sightings, the things that you're seeing in your yard or out while hiking. You can throw those in there also. And we've gotten lots of questions about different bird sightings people are seeing, birds they're not familiar with. Keep in mind, this Birds of New York book is great. This will help you identify birds by color. So say you see a bird that's gray, you flip to the little gray tab here, and you can flip through all the birds that have gray color in them. So it can be a little difficult this time of the year, as some things aren't in their normal, say, breeding plumage that these books tend to highlight. So they're in their winter plumage, or they could be juveniles. So it can be a little difficult. You might need a more of an intensive guide to identify some of them, but this is a really good start if you are just starting your bird ID. This is a wonderful book, The Birds of New York. And as we're getting into the winter months, time will tell what kind of finches we see here. And if we are going to have an eruption year, that would be ideal. And you might see some really neat things at your feeders. If you're looking to get some information on what are winter finches and what kind could you expect, we do have a little book about winter finches and some of the other birds that get grouped into these. And these are birds that are normally up higher north, more into Canada and beyond, but sometimes due to food scarcities and bad weather, sometimes they will flow down to our area. So time will tell if we're having an eruption year this year. We'll keep you posted, of course, about the kind of things that everybody's seeing here in the upstate New York area. So as always, we love to see who's on. You can put your questions, comments, all that good stuff in the comments. And then as far as products go for the fall, keep in mind shelter. Shelter is always important for the birds. And we've got a couple different things that are good for the fall and winter months. The first being winter roosts. So roosts come in different kind of styles. I'll show you a couple of them. But you can get what are called winter roosts. So this almost looks like a birdhouse, but you'll see that the opening where the birds go in is at the bottom. It's not at the top. And what makes this different from a birdhouse also is that inside there's perches. So you can see there's 3 perches in there. So what birds will do is to get out of the wind, the rain, the snow, anything like that, they'll fly into these roosts and they'll perch on those perches as just a resting place until the weather is better, or to spend the night. And I like this style specifically because you can convert it into a birdhouse in the spring and in the summertime. So these perches that are in here, actually, the 3 perches inside, you can whittle them out of the house. You can just pull them right out. And then this door can flip over, and so you can make it a birdhouse in the spring and summer months. So it's kind of like a twofer if you're looking for a way to give the birds some kind of a roost, but then you also want to use it as a birdhouse once it gets to breeding season. This allows you to do this and do that. And it's called the convertible winter roost because you can convert it from a winter roost to a house for them to raise their young. And if you like that idea of a winter roost, but you're looking for something larger, we do have larger versions like this one. Kind of same idea. It's wooden, and inside there are perches. So if you open it up, inside there's a lot of perching room here for birds. So this one can't be converted into a nesting box in the spring, although birds have nested in weirder places. You could get something like a most likely nesting in here, or a house finch or a house sparrow, excuse me. But it's not technically a birdhouse. But so if you're looking for one that you can use as a birdhouse in the spring, I would do the first one. But it does give you lots of space here for the birds. They can all perch in there, and they can go in there to kind of protect themselves as the weather gets cooler and a little more extreme. So one thing that a lot of you guys use, I know too, that so those are the roosting houses, they're called. Then we've got these little things called roosting pockets, and a lot of people use these. They're super simple to hang up. It's the same idea as those roosting houses. They're just smaller and you can hang them, whereas those houses, you want to mount them on something so they're stable. But these you could put in a tree, you could tuck them in a bush, and same idea. So we've got them in different shapes and different sizes. And I just kind of tuck them into the bushes in my backyard, and the birds will go in and out of them as a way to protect themselves from the bad weather. So these are kind of small, so it's not something that they're going to nest in again in the spring, but it's really just to provide some kind of protection for the birds as we're getting into the more extreme months. So those are some different ways you can provide birds with some shelter. Another thing that's important for birds in the wintertime, all year round, but in the wintertime also, is going to be water. And you can provide them with water with what's called a heated bird bath. So we have a whole bunch of heated bird baths out now. So we do have them out on display so you can see the different types. And heated bird baths, they all plug in. So there's no such thing as a solar heated bird bath or a solar heater yet. It would just take too much energy for that solar panel to be able to heat the bird bath. So they do all plug in. So you do need to have some kind of an outdoor plug. If you run any kind of lights or holiday lights or anything like that, you could usually use the same kind of plug. And we have different styles. So this is called a 3-in-1, which just means it has different hardware to mount it different ways. It comes with little feet that you can just put it on the ground. Maybe you can see it there kind of. You can put it on the ground. It comes with a little clamp. You could put it on a deck. And it comes with the hardware so you could screw it into the side of the deck or the side of your house, something like that. So this is called the 3-in-1 because it has 3 different mounting options. But this is just one style we have. We have some that stick in the ground. We have some that are on stands, so you could put them anywhere in your yard or on a deck. So we've got lots of different options for heated bird baths, and they all run on a thermostat. So they don't run, so the power isn't running to them constantly. It just runs enough to keep the water unfrozen. So the water doesn't ever get hot. It's just it keeps it warm enough that it won't freeze over. So it is important for birds to get water in the winter months. They will drink it. They'll use it to clean their feathers. So keep that in mind as well for the winter months. And if you do have something, if you've got a bird bath that can be left out all year round, so say you've got a bird bath that's metal or plastic, or usually a resin bird bath can be left out, you can put a bird bath heater in those as well. So you could just put a little heater inside. Again, you plug it in, it operates on a thermostat, and it will just keep the water unfrozen. If you have a bird bath that's made of glass, or if it's cement or clay, probably going to want to bring that in, because if the water freezes and thaws in that too many times, it can cause it to crack. So that's another tip for the winter months. Not all bird baths can be left outside, at least in our area here where we get a lot of snow and freezing temperatures. So those are some different ways you can provide shelter and water to birds. And then food is super important as well, because they need those calories to survive, to keep their body temperatures up. So I can show you some of the different feeders that I love, that the birds really, really seem to like, especially in the wintertime when you want to make sure to give them all that fat and the protein that they need. And the first I always like to mention are suet feeders, of course. So suet are these blocks of fat. They provide lots of calories for the birds, which is important. And you can put it in something like this, something as simple as this. This is a suet feeder with what's called a paddle tail on this. If you've tuned into any of these before, you've probably heard me talk about paddle tail suet feeders. Some suet feeders are just simple small cages, which are fine for the birds, but if you've got larger woodpeckers like those red-bellied woodpeckers or flickers or pileated woodpeckers, you'll probably want something that has this paddle tail feature. It just allows the birds to get some support for their tail when they come to feed. They'll cling onto this mesh grate here, and then they'll use this paddle tail as a tail prop so they can be upright when they're feeding. So this is our best-selling paddle tail suet feeder here. It's made out of recycled plastic, so it's super easy to clean. Every once in a while, we get some that the squirrels are chewing on. I've had mine for like, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years. And the squirrels are finally starting to chew along the sides of it, which does happen. That can happen with the wood as well. It seems to happen a little bit less with the recycled plastic. But we've got those. We also have these larger ones like this. This is twice the size, so it holds 2 suet cakes, which is nice. So you don't have to trudge out in the snow, or you don't have to fill the feeder as often. And it has a really, really long, large paddle tail. So that's really good, especially for the pileated woodpeckers. So if you are lucky enough to be getting pileated woodpeckers, this is a really good feeder for them. So another paddle tail style feeder made especially for those large woodpeckers. And then if you are going through a lot of suet, which I know some of you guys are, there are even larger suet feeders like this. Like this one is pretty big here, and it holds large suet cakes that instead of being several ounces are more like 2-3 pounds. So this is a 3-pound suet block, and that will go into a large suet feeder like this. So again, especially in the winter, if you're concerned about having to go outside too much and fill your feeders, getting a larger capacity feeder is always good. You can do that with seed, and you can also do it with suet. So we do sell these really big blocks of suet and seed cakes as well. So keep that in mind also for the fall and the winter. And I really have been enjoying using these seed logs as well. So just like how we've got large suet blocks that are about 3 pounds, we do carry large blocks of seed that could go into a feeder like I just showed. And we've got them in this shape as well, these seed logs. And this one, especially Flaming Hot Feast, is super popular because it doesn't attract squirrels. The squirrels could take a bite out of it, and they don't like the hot sauce that's on it. But the birds can't taste it. The birds don't have as many taste buds as mammals do. So this is a really great way to feed birds and also keep the squirrels at bay. These seed logs, I don't know if you can really see it here, but they all have a hole drilled into them in the center. And then they'll just slide onto a super simple feeder like this, just a little rod here with perches. And the birds will perch on here and feed. Sometimes they'll perch right on top of the log and peck away at it. And these last a long time. So I only have to refill these about every week, whereas I have to refill my feeders every day. So if you're going through a lot of seed, this is another way you can still provide for the birds, but not have to fill your feeders up consistently every single day. So people use these a lot if they're going away on vacation, or again, if they just don't have the time or the ability to fill their feeders every single day. So seed logs come in different flavors. We've got all kinds of different types. So we do have those as well. And really, if you are feeding the birds, you probably have some kind of feeder for sunflower seed or a sunflower seed mix. So they come in different styles. We've got tube feeders. These are called hopper feeders. So these larger styles like this, you might see them in recycled plastic, like this one's made of recycled plastic, just like that suet feeder I was showing you. They also come in wood. And these are great because they hold so much. You really don't have to fill them up as much. I really like this one because it has the suet feeders right on the side. So this is a nice way to feed the birds. It has a lot of capacity, And some of them you can hang, like this one does come with a hanger. Most of the time you want to mount them on some kind of a pole. And when you're picking one out, if you look at the bottom, a lot of them will have some way where you can mount what's called a flange, like a metal plate onto the bottom of them. And then you can put that on a pole. And we've got all that kind of stuff here for you as well. We can help you with setting one up on a pole. And that way it's stationary, it's super easy to fill on and off a hanger all the time. So hopper feeders, they provide lots of perching room, so you can get the bigger birds like cardinals and blue jays, and you don't have to refill them as often as you do usually with your tube feeders. And so those are awesome, especially in the winter when you don't want to go out into the snow all the time to refill those. Platform feeder, so this is called a platform feeder or a tray feeder. And these are awesome because you can use them for just about anything. People use these for Orioles in the spring, and in the summertime, they'll put little jars of jelly in here. They'll put oranges in there. Right now, you'd want to put some kind of a sunflower seed or sunflower seed mix in here to give you the biggest diversity. And with platform feeders, just about anything can use them. There's nothing limiting the size of the birds. Sometimes if your feeder's too small, it can be hard for larger birds to perch on it. That's not the case with platform feeders. So if you do have a platform feeder, a couple things to look for, or if you're trying to get a platform feeder, having one with drainage on it helps. If you can see, this one has a bottom that's perforated, so if water gets in there, it'll just go right through, which helps because you don't want water to sit in there. It'll make your seed get moldy or soupy, and it can be really not a great situation there. But having perforated bottoms on the feeders can really help. And say you have a platform feeder already and we're starting to get more rain or more snow, you can always add a weather guard to it. So we do have these weather guards in different colors and different sizes. You can always add one of these and hang your feeder from it, and then you'll get less less rain and snow or what have you getting into the feeder. So you can always add a weather guard to not only your platform feeders but to your tube feeders. We have some weather guards that'll just rest right on the top of the tube feeder. And so we've got a whole bunch of different options as far as those go in order to keep some of the wind or the rain and snow off of your feeders. And it'll help the birds too. I've noticed when we start to get a lot of snow, the weather guard will just accumulate all the snow, and then the birds can fly underneath and just feed from the feeder without having to get all tangled up in all of the snow. If you have a heated bird bath in the winter, you might get bluebirds. A lot of you guys have sent in photos in the past of bluebirds coming to your heated bird baths in the winter, which is great. If you are lucky enough to get bluebirds in the winter months, and some of them do stay, you can still provide them with some food too. They will eat suet. They'll eat, we have little things called suet nuggets. They're like little balls of suet that you can put in your feeders. You can also still provide them with mealworms. We've got these freeze-dried mealworms. You can just put them in a little hanging dish, or if you've got one of those tray feeders like I was just showing, you can put the freeze-dried mealworms in there. So you can use it for multiple things, those tray feeders, which are really nice. You could throw suet nuggets in there. You could even throw a block of suet in there if you wanted to. So bluebirds, they are kind of a larger bird. They're in that thrush family, so they're in the same family as robins. They're not as big as robins, but they do need some bigger perching room. So platform feeders are great for them, or anything that has perches on it. Like this has some pretty large perches on it. This is a bluebird feeder here for mealworms. So you can still feed mealworms to the birds in the wintertime. And finally, a couple others that I really like. Peanuts. You can't go wrong with feeding the birds peanuts. Blue jays especially love the peanuts. I've got a red-bellied woodpecker that comes every day to the peanuts. So peanuts are great for woodpeckers, for blue jays, for nuthatches. Chickadees love them. Titmice love them. I know a lot of you guys are getting titmice over the past couple weeks in bigger numbers than usual. And they'll eat peanuts. You can do peanuts in the shell. And this is a feeder for peanuts in the shell. And you can tell because it's got these really large holes on it. The birds will just pull the peanuts right out of here, and they'll perch on this nice big perch here. So this is one style. Or you can do what are called the peanut pickouts. Those are the insides of the peanuts. And you can even do something like this. This is a really small peanut feeder. Anything that says sunflower that's the mesh like this that the sunflower will pull out of, you can use for peanuts also. So you don't have to get this really elaborate peanut feeder. Like this one's only $21.95. It's got perches on it, and it's got a little kind of tiny, but still there. It's got a little weather guard, and the birds will just pick away at the peanut pieces and pull them out. A lot of the birds that eat peanuts, they don't need perches. They can cling onto the side of a feeder. So you don't have to get a peanut pickout feeder that has a big perch. Peanuts in the shell, kind of a different story. The blue jays, while they can cling onto the side of feeders, they can't cling as easily as, say, the woodpeckers or nuthatches can. So if you're getting a peanuts in the shell feeder, I would get one with a big perch. The peanut pickouts, you don't necessarily need a large perch. You do want to make sure it's in a place where squirrels can't get to it. If you don't want squirrels feeding from your peanut feeder, definitely want to put it on a pole that has a baffle on it, or hang a large baffle over the top to keep squirrels out, because they will definitely make quick work of your peanuts. And finally, finches. We have finches that are here all winter long. This is a new finch feeder we just got in. We're always talking about keeping feeders clean and finding a feeder that you can easily clean. This one is the mesh style, and it has a base that just pops off, so it's easy to clean. It twists off, so you can clean it fairly easily. This one's only $24.95. It is plastic, so again, you want to keep it away from squirrels. Although squirrels tend not to bother the Niger seed too much, you never know. Anytime you have a feeder that's all plastic, you're kind of doing a crapshoot as far as keeping the squirrels out. But this is a really nice, inexpensive way to feed your finches. And while we have goldfinches here every year, all year, in the winter months, sometimes we get other birds flowing in bigger numbers, like pine siskins. We might get what's called the common redpoll in the wintertime, and they'll come to Niger feeders as well. So we get customers that'll say, oh, my finches, they left, they migrated, they went down south, so I'm going to pull my Niger feeder. I would definitely keep your Niger feeder out because the finches are here all winter, and you could get other species that aren't here in the spring and summertime. So it's really fun to see what kind of things you can get coming to your Niger feeders. So those are the feeders that I recommend, the products I recommend. You want to make sure you've got some kind of shelter. No matter how big or small, shelter is always good. If you can provide water, that is ideal. It's hard for birds to find shallow, unfrozen sources of water in the wintertime. And then feeders, having a mix of different food types is super important. So having suet, having some kind of a sunflower seed feeder or sunflower seed mix out there really helps. Peanuts and Niger seeds. So it's really 4 major types of feeders that I recommend: the sunflower seed, the Niger, the suet, and peanuts. And any kind of combination of those is always good. And the more diversity you have as far as food types, the more diversity of birds you'll find coming into your yard. So if you've got any kind of questions or comments or sightings, absolutely, you can throw those in the comments. I should mention that this Saturday, while we will be live again on Saturday, we have Birds of Prey from Wild Wings that will be here as well from 10 to 1. So we've got that going on this Saturday as well, which is the 22nd. So if you're looking for something to do Saturday morning, we'll absolutely have some Birds of Prey here at the store from Wild Wings, which is always fun to see. So it looks like Duster's on. She says, good morning. Dina says, good morning, everyone. I've had hummingbird sightings at my feeder for the last several days. Okay, so that's kind of rare. Every once in a while, we'll hear of a sighting of a hummingbird this in October, but it's pretty rare. Usually by the time we've gone through September, they're really on their way out. So it sounds like Dina's got some hummingbirds still coming to her feeders. You can always add a little bit of extra sugar. They're probably migrating through, so it's not necessarily a bad thing to add a little bit of extra sugar to your feeders this time of the year. That can give them a leg up on their migration as well. Bob is on. He says, "Good morning. I've been having a lot of activity at my bird bath. Wide variety of birds from blue jays to woodpeckers and everything in between drinking water. Had a visit from a female eastern towhee this morning. Of course, the yellow rumped warbler surprised me this past week by foraging around my yard. Ooh, I want a roosting house." Yeah, so sounds like Bob has gotten an eastern towhee. And as I've been just kind of browsing people's sightings here and there, a lot of people have been um, posting pictures of eastern towhee and trying to get identifications and figure out what kind of bird it is they have. So keep your eyes out, especially underneath your feeders. They seem to, well, they do come to feeders sometimes and actually perch on them. A lot of the time people see them underneath their feeders. So here's a male eastern towhee, and the male is quite black in color, so the black and white is pretty striking there. They've got a bright red eye, but the female is going to be more brown in color. So she is lighter. So here is the female eastern towhee right there. And again, this is from that Birds of New York field guide, which is pretty good for identifying what kind of birds you might be getting underneath your feeder or at your feeder or while you're out bird watching. So again, it doesn't have every single bird that you'll find in the state in it, but it's a really good start. It's a good thing to flip through too. If you're trying to learn some of your different species, it's going to have the most common ones in there. So there's 100, it says right here on the back, 126 different species in here. So that's a really good way to start learning some of your different and more common types of birds, is just getting a field guide like this and flipping through it, and you'll start to learn them by osmosis kind of. So then when you do see them in person, you'll kind of be able to click to what it is you're actually seeing. So that's what I always recommend. That's how I've kind of gotten better at my bird identification, is just flipping through some of these field guides that, having them in person instead of on your phone, I think can make a big difference too. Dina says also have the red-breasted nuthatch back visiting. Yeah, on Saturday I was showing off some different photos, and we'll share more of your photos as well this Saturday. And we were talking about nuthatches, especially the red-breasted nuthatches, which get looped into that group of winter finches, because sometimes they do have eruptive years where we have more of them than normal. They tend to be more common in the winter months. So this is the red-breasted nuthatch, and Dina's been getting that at her feeder, and so she's been getting these. We've had a lot of customers saying that they've been getting the red-breasted nuthatches. So could be an eruptive year for these guys, for the red-breasted nuthatches. So keep your eye out on for these guys in your yard. Coming to a suet feeder or a peanut feeder, they'll eat sunflower seeds. I also sometimes get them at my finch feeder, because I put in my finch feeder, I put my the finch mix in it, which is a mix of Niger and sunflower hearts, and they'll come to that sometimes. So keep your eye out for the red-breasted nuthatch. Dina says Birds of New York is a very helpful book to have around. Yes, I agree. Randy says good morning, Liz and every birdie. And so it looks like that's everybody's comments and questions for the day. We'll be back on Saturday with another broadcast. You can tune in then, or you can visit us live here at the store Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, where we will have live Birds of Prey from Wild Wings here. So until then, have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.